All right, boys, this is episode number 17 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction company. As always, I'm going to kick it off here with a review. We got this one the other night, actually. Here it is. So this is from Andre. He's a contractor, does like a lot of renovations, remodeling and stuff. So he provided this awesome comment on YouTube after watching some of our videos. So discovered this CRM on a Reddit post, decided to explore a little and instantly fell in love with it. Super simple and straightforward, nice features and definitely well priced, making the switch from JobTread to this. Thanks. So shout out to Andre. Appreciate that. Andre. So love seeing these reviews. How you guys doing?
What's going on, boys? How are you?
Great. Glad to be back.
Good. Yes, sir. So there's a few interesting topics we have on the docket today. I'm going to kick it off with this one, which it's been making the headlines on a lot of different news and publications sites recently. So check this out. So this is titled, BC Construction Company Goes to Trial 12 Years After a Worker's Death. So this case is a rare example of a company facing criminal charges for a workplace death. So even gives like the investigation report right here. So this is looks like it's an excavation company. This happened 12 years ago where I guess one of their employees had a fatal injury. Just to go through some of it. So more than 12 years after a BC construction worker was killed on the job, his employer and foreman for the work crew are on trial in BC Supreme Court. Jeff Karen, a pipe layer, was crushed to death while replacing a sewer line in Burnaby, and fellow worker Thomas Richer were seriously injured. On Monday, the first day of what's expected to be a 6-week trial, J. Coate and Son Excavating Limited pleaded not guilty to one count each of criminal negligence causing death and criminal negligence causing bodily harm. I'm not going to go through the rest of the article here. I can post it, but really crazy situation here. So just, when I think, one of the things I think about when running a business is always in the back of your head is risk mitigation, right? And that could mean so many different things, whether it's a case like this, mitigating risk of like, if you're an online company, phishing scams and cyber attacks, and always mitigating risk. That's always a thought. So Charlie, I'd love to hear from you as someone who's like on site every day. When you hear an article like this and like risk mitigation, like how are you processing this?
First thing I thought of when I saw excavation, I was like, they probably had guys inside of some kind of trench that wasn't shored properly. And it's very, very common. I was actually scrolling through Instagram the other day, and I saw there's this kid, I guess, he's got his own company, and he does waterproofing. And every single picture on his feed is him or one of his guys inside the trench, which is like right beside the person's house. I'm sure you guys have seen this guy too, if you're scrolling. And I actually personally know one of my good friends used to do waterproofing, and he was in a trench exactly like that, and it just gave out. And luckily he jumped right at the last minute, so it only pinned his lower back and down, but he had to get dug out by firefighters, right? So a lot of times you don't even think about it, which is why I'm very kind of like weary to judge when I look at these headlines. I really kind of want to know the ins and outs, like what happened, all the details before I kind of make a judgment on it. But in this case, where you're digging a trench and you have guys laying pipe inside that hole, there's no excuse, man. And to expect, let's say you have a first-year apprentice, a third-year apprentice, to expect them to even know what soil conditions are, understanding the weather, how it can affect that trench and how it could just give way. They have no clue. They would never know. So it's really up to the employer to make sure that his foremans and his crew are well educated on it and well prepared for it. With that being said, also too, the era that me and Johnny come from, safety was few and far between when it came to, procedures and people actually putting in these things in place for us. We didn't even have first aid kits on sites. We would literally just wrap cuts with dirt and electrical tape, right? Whatever you can kind of find to stop bleeding. But as a company owner, I understand that like times have changed and we have a lot of responsibility as owners. So, our guys, do regular toolbox talks where they talk about, things that they can do to be safe. Um, if anybody ever sees anybody doing something that's extremely unsafe, they're encouraged to go tell somebody about it just to kind of, so it gets back to us. Because at the end of the day, there are cases where things happen on site and the owners are not even aware of. They might have actually had a plan in place, and something still happens, right? Which is important to have a plan in place, because then you can now prove to the ministry that like, hey, look, like I did what I had to do. I put these talks forward. I put the paperwork forward to my foremans. They were supposed to have these talks. Somewhere down the line, it didn't happen. So, you can only be responsible for so much. That's what I'll say about that, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not on site all the time, right? My foremans are, the rest of my employees are. So my control only goes so far. Now, do we keep an eye on it? We definitely do, as much as we can to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, once I walk off site, it's in their hands, right? We're responsible adults. The education part is one of them, but then it has to actually be put into action by the people on site.
But in this case too, like just going back to this article, it's like this company is being charged for negligence. Like they're in the Supreme Court. So it's really never out of your hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Well, that's the thing. But like again, like I don't know like the details, right? Like did they have shoring boxes on site, right? Like did the employer provide them? Were they trained to put them into the ditch, right, into the trench? And was it something that just the foreman said, we're behind on schedule. I don't want to bother putting it in. Look, it's hard clay. It's not going to collapse, right? At that point, I don't really know what the laws are, right? Like now, does that absolve the employer of that responsibility? I would assume it should, right? Because and that's what I meant by having the proper paperwork put into place, right? And having your safety books and all of these things implemented. Because at the end of the day, that's, at that point, you've done your job. You've educated your crew on that stuff. But whether or not the foreman actually does it or not is kind of out of your hands, right? So I'm
sure.
Curious to know.
That's a good point too. One thing I'll add to that, and Johnny, I'd love to hear what you think about this. But that's the one thing when it comes to legal and lawyers and disputes, you can be faced with a lawsuit, and that person like issuing that lawsuit can have a total like non-winnable case, but like they have every right to just like give it to you, and now you have to defend yourself. You have to put up the money, and even if you did absolutely everything right. So there's always that risk of that happening. So I think that just furthers the importance of like having your shit in order, the documentation, your checks and all that.
And just one thing to add too, it's like I don't know where I stand on him. I mean, I've always kind of been of the mind of an eye for an eye. A life was lost, and if it was lost, because health and safety regulations, not that they weren't implemented, just common sense wasn't even used, and this poor person lost their life because of it. I mean, in my mind, so, somebody should pay for that. As an employer, it's like, fuck, I would never want to deal with that. But I'm also a father. I'm a husband. If anything ever happened to a friend of mine, my kid, my wife, I would want blood. So I can completely understand that, somebody wants retribution. Somebody wants somebody to pay for this, right? It's a tough one.
It is. Johnny, you're silent over there.
No, I just, it's like Charlie said, it's a tough one. I don't want to jump to conclusions. We don't know all the details that happen. I don't want to just read a headline and just blame the company or not blame the company. All I can say is, obviously there's some due diligence that's going on there. They're trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened. But the reality is, like we talk about it a lot, right? Construction's a fucking bitch of an environment, right? It's a tough job. There's a lot of risk involved, especially like those guys that are flying forms, on high-rise buildings. They're working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 stories in the air. sure they're using a lanyard. You can test the lanyard, make sure it's up to date, but one little frail in it, and if you fall, will it hold you hard enough? If you're taking all the right precautions and going through all the right steps and procedures, and God forbid something still happen, it's tough because like Charlie said, you want retribution for a loved one's passing, but at the same time, what more could have the company done in that scenario? And that's where being an employee once upon a time, and then now being an employer, the one thing is you have to take health and safety seriously. You got to get all your guys trained. You have to put all the proper equipment on whatever it is that you're doing in the job, and you got to make sure that they're following these steps. But I also do believe, right, and I'm not saying this is the case for this exact one, but I do believe that there has to be some responsibility on also the worker. So if you were trained, if you were given all the right tools, proper procedures to follow, and you thought that you could just get something done quickly without following those procedures because you've done it 100 times, and God forbid something happens, to me, that's where that kind of line, that gray line comes into play, where I wouldn't blame the company, right? Because what about if it was the foreman? Right? The foreman's the most competent person, but sometimes we all know it doesn't matter whether it's construction, doesn't matter what it is. We all get, I want to say, a little bit too comfortable. We all, it's like we're all a little bit cocky because we've done it a million times. So, I could get away with this fast. I've done this a million times. I can't tell you how many electricians I know have changed panels live, right? And like, just in my mind, it's like, you guys are nuts. It's like, oh man, it's easy. I've done this a million times. You just do this and that. But the one time that they touch together could be lethal, right? So again, I hate to read off of a headline, or even, nowadays, unfortunately, even a news article, because they might not be telling the full story, right? Or the exact events that happen. But definitely, like, it just goes to show you that health and safety is massive in the construction world. The amount of training that is actually, like, by law required, I'll say, at least here in Ontario, and all the rigorous kind of training that they make our guys go through, and these toolbox talks, and before you're working at heights, if something's dangerous, the amount of planning you have to do before you even start work, where, like Charlie said, when we came up through the trade, it was just fucking do it, right? This is the job, this is what we got to do, and just go ahead and do it. Where now there's a lot of thought process behind it. There's a lot of planning behind it. So if everybody's taking those right steps, and God forbid there still is a fatality, it's like anything else, right? Like, I know it's harsh to say, but it's part of the job, right? Like construction it's a tough environment. It could be very dangerous at times. But at the same time, it's a job that has to get done, right? Unfortunately.
For sure. The part I want to stress, right? And, back to like risk mitigation. God forbid something. So I just pulled up some information here in 2023 in the US, 826 worker deaths in the construction industry happened. In Ontario, earliest data, 2023, there were 16 construction-related fatalities. In British Columbia, there were 54 in 2023. So I'm saying this because, like you're saying, this is a a lot can happen in construction, like as we see from data, right? It could be dangerous if you're not putting the right like safety precautions in place. So what I'm getting at is, if you're a company, and let's assume you're doing everything by the book, you have all the documentation, you're training your guys, your sites are clean, like everything is by the book. As we're seeing in this example, there could be a lawsuit still. Even, God forbid, something happened on your site. You did everything by the book. 10 years later, there could be a lawsuit. If someone wants to file a lawsuit, they could do it, even if they don't even have a case. So knowing that, like, that's a possibility, you're wearing your business hat, you're always like, okay, risk mitigation. Like, now you have to think about, like, storing every single one of your documents for over a decade, as in this case, right? So, like, how do you guys think about just that part of it, and like documentation, storage, like keeping records,
Well,
because that's important.
100%. And that's where we always stress having some type of system in place that, kind of harmonizes your company and, your data storage as well. I know that, through Jobtable, we're working on something. I don't want to give out too much information, but to obviously give every contractor the ability to have this information and stored properly. God forbid something would happen. But the reality is, like you said, Costa, there could be a fresh snowfall. It could be in the middle of the night while the snow's still coming down. Somebody can walk, right in front of your house while they're walking the dog at 3 o'clock in the morning, slip and fall, and basically sue you because you didn't shovel, your part of the sidewalk on time. And you're going to turn around and be like, fuck, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. It was snowing. I was sleeping. I didn't even know it was sleeping, or it was snowing while I was sleeping. How can I even be responsible for that? Right. But I think it just comes down to when any type of like accident, like a fatality occurs, people want somebody's head on a stick. And unfortunately, that's where, the first person to blame is the company. But if you go through the documentation and you've seen that everything they've done everything properly, the people are still going to put the blame on them, right? And that's why I just say I don't know the whole story behind there. You know how they always say there's always three sides to a story. I don't want to read a headline in a news article and jump to conclusions regarding that company, but all I can say is the company. It's always like they're the last fall, right? It's always their fault. It's always, it's the owners. They're making money hand over fist, and that's why something happened because they were negligent and they were this. No, in the end of the day, if you've gone through the proper training and you talk about this, once a week, 4 times a month, some companies do it more as well. You provide all the proper equipment, right? And something still happens because the worker was negligent. To me, we're all adults. Everybody has to take responsibility, right? And that's where I believe sometimes this health and safety is very skewed, because if a company follows the guidelines to a T and sometimes goes above and beyond, and God forbid something still happens, then at that point, you guys tell me, and even to the listeners listening, like please drop in the comments, because at that point, I don't really think it's the company's fault, right? Like we're all adults. You have to take responsibility. If you're told not to jaywalk because you could get a ticket, and never mind, you could be hit by a car, but you've been jaywalking your whole life, and one day you decide to jaywalk and a car hits you because you came out of nowhere, is it the car's fault or is it your fault?
But that's my whole point, John.
Yeah.
Like, and you're right? But the fact is, it's not even like a safety thing. It's just like a legal thing. Like, at the end of the day, you can still get a lawsuit, and you still have to defend yourself, even if you did everything by the book. Like, that's the whole point.
I was going to add, it actually doesn't matter what the story is. All that's going to matter in the end, in the trial, is what is your safety procedure, right? Like, what have you implemented? Where's the paperwork? That's what people want to see. I've actually even met employers that don't have an actual process or procedure for health and safety, but they're very conscious. So they'll take the time to go to site. They'll give their guys harnesses. They'll tell them, hey, you need a shoring box. Let me know, whatever the case may be. But the guys don't wear their harnesses. They don't use the shoring box, right? And because there's nothing on paper, in the end, if something happens to somebody, there's nothing proving that there was anything implemented. Right. So at the end of the day, it's what you can prove. Right. So assume everyone is not going to be safe and act as if that's what's going to happen, and control what you can. So create a proper procedure, document it using a software so that you can spread it out to your employees, to everyone in your company, and you'll have a record of it for as many years as you need.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, interesting one. Any final words with this topic, or?
Other than, my heart goes out to the family that, has lost somebody. And I just hope, truly that the company followed procedure. And if not, then, at that point, then yeah, it's on the company, right? That's kind of my final thought on this.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I'm pretty sure these cases are public, so it's been an interesting one to follow.
Yeah, sure. Definitely, I'm gonna follow that.
I've personally done some crazy shit in my day, especially in the early days of our company. But anything that was beyond safe, it was always me that I would push my guys out of the way, and I would always do it. I would never let my guys get into a crazy situation like that, which isn't the smartest thing to do either. But like I said, we were cut from a different cloth, and we come from a different era. But again, the fact of the matter is we're in 2025 now, and everybody's got to get with the times, because you don't want to get run over by the hand of the law.
Yeah, with that being said, every industry, sub-trade, they always have their, pros and cons, you can say. Johnny, I know you've been speaking to a lot of just general contractors recently. And so and we've had some interesting conversation with clients and just people in the industry, of course, but specifically with GCs who I think are very unique in the industry, where they're dealing with the sub trades directly. They're that middleman. What do you think are some of the good GCs that you've worked with? Like what are some of their strong suits? Like what makes a good GC a good one?
Yeah, so a GC, for all intents and purposes, I'm not saying all of them. But most GCs, they're basically, they deal with the client, they manage the project, they put the team together. What I noticed with the good GCs is they know how to draw that line between the client and the trades. And what I mean by that is sometimes clients can be over demanding. And a lot of, I want to say, the GCs, that we work with, they know where to draw the line with the client and say, like, look, guys, my trades have been working around the clock to finish this for you, but some of the stuff that you guys are asking is just, it's not possible, right? We can't meet this deadline because, you're asking for, 3 months worth of work to be done in 2 weeks. It's, and it always happens like that too. Like right around Christmas, everybody wants to just, have everything done for the break. But like what I noticed with these GCs, like good GCs, is they know how to draw that line between the two. And also just to add to that, I noticed a lot of the good GCs, they have a team that they work with, and it's because they understand the quality of work that comes with that one subtrade. And the problem that I see is a GC, they're not the plumbers, they're not the electricians, they're not the HVAC guys, they're not the framers, drywallers, and so on and so forth. They manage them. So a lot of times they're put in this position where they either need to meet a price to get the job or don't. And if they start substituting trades out for the cheaper guy that they haven't worked with or they know is not as good, unfortunately, that can be a totally separate company, but it all falls back onto the shoulders of the GC. And it's all kind of a picture that's painted to the client on what kind of GC is this, right? So I always find the best GCs are the ones that stick to their guns, the ones that are like, no, this is my team. This is my plumber. This is his cost. I understand you might have a guy over here, but I've never worked with him. And if this guy fucks up, it's the responsibility's on me, right? So I always find the good GCs always stick with their team, and they're not nitpicking on, lowest price. They care more about quality, right? They like moving together as a team. Because if you've worked on so many projects together, everybody understands each other. Everybody understands how they work. Everybody understands each other's, positives and negatives, and the team collectively helps push that project along. I notice on a lot of these open tender ones, these GCs, and we get them all the time. We get bid invites from everybody under the sun, and we don't price to a lot of them because to me it's just unsolicited pricing. If I don't have a relationship with you, you've never picked up a phone, called me, try to work with me on a project, what's the point of me pricing? Like, how do you even know we're good? Right? How do I know you pay me on time? Right? So I find the good GCs are typically the ones that put a team together, kind of stick to that team, and whether the client wants to accept it or not, the GCs that tell them straight to their face, this is my team, this is my price, this is what we can provide you. The value added is we're going to do a bang up job, but we're going to do a bang up job with the team that I have. Right.
So, John, I'm curious, out of those 10 like unsolicited requests for bids that you get out of 10, like how many are you actually bidding, if any? Zero.
Zero. And I say it all the time. And, some people call me stupid for it. Some people say I'm doing it the right way. I get calls from their estimators like, hey, we've been sending you guys, bids for the last 4 months, haven't gotten a response. And it's like, who are you?
Yeah, we
Right?
never
Like, who are you? Like, if you don't even have the decency to pick up a phone and call me, how do you want me to spend a week and a half, 2 weeks going through drawings, that I'm not able to charge for and price to you? Like that, I always say, look, I'm a sub trade, and everybody always looks at me. You're saying that because, you're on one side of the fence. You don't know how it is here. And that's why I actually tip my cap to all the GCs out there, because the reality is, whether you're building a house, whether you're doing an interior fit up, whether you're building a building, it doesn't matter. The client is going to the GC. All the responsibility falls on the GC. And what I find is those GCs that typically have the best name in the industry, the ones that do the best work, are the ones that stick to their team. Right? It's not a race to the bottom for the lowest number, because you can get numbers that are all over the place from the same subtrades, right? One plumbing company might be 30,000, the other one 60,000, right? A lot of the question comes to the ones that are 60,000. Why are they so high? But nobody's questioning the guy at 30,000, right? Where the good GCs, because they know how you price, they know how you work, they understand your pricing, right? So that's why, to a lot of these other GCs that are out there, it's a tough gig for them, because they're trying to win work, but unfortunately, they're just going to so many trades that they've never met. And if they win that project and they selected the lowest number, how do you know that guy's good enough, right? I feel like the GCs have a very tough job, because all the weight's on their shoulders, essentially, for all these projects.
They do. They have a very tough job, and the reason, guys like me and Johnny don't just bid to these companies that send us these random, bid and tender packages over and over again for months on end, is there's so many layers to having a good general contracting company, and I truly don't envy them. From having client relations to actually having, your foot in the door into a pool of, good projects, is a challenge in itself. Number two, having a good, competent estimating team that is in constant communication with all of their sub trades and who understand Not the trades to the level that we understand plumbing, but they have a basic understanding of plumbing, electrical, because they have to, right? So they can answer questions and so on and so forth and get through the estimating process. But then you land a job, you have a good office staff that is now issuing POs, that is in communication with all their sub trades, right? For payment and invoicing. Then you have your project managers that are in constant communication with the clients, with the engineers, with the consultants, that are relaying RFIs and messages and extras between them and you, right? So that's just, we haven't even started the job yet, right? And then you get to the site, you have your site supers and the coordination on site. So to be expected to bid to a random general contractor who didn't even have the decency to pick up the phone and say, hey, I heard of you through such and such. I'd love to get to know you. Let's have a lunch. And then we can start working together. To be expected to work with somebody that doesn't do that and just hope for the best is crazy for me and Johnny. We've never worked like that. We never will. If we're going to get into bed with you for potentially, a small job or, multi $100,000 project, whatever the case may be, we have to have some kind of background and history with you. We're not just going to do that. There's just too many. We've seen too many bad GCs over the years to even consider that as an option. With that being said, I can think of like general contractors that are very, very high up on my list. We've worked with some that are, that have been as close to perfect as I think you can be. But in a world where there's such a revolving door when it comes to site supers and project managers, it's very hard to stay at a consistent level. And like all of those things that I said, from estimating to job execution, because guys are constantly wanting more money. They up and leave, or they're just hiring anybody that they can to put them on site just to fill a spot. So you have general contracting companies that go through these great runs and then they just fucking go downhill. And me and Johnny see it all the time, you know. We've known some site supers that have worked for general contractors that we do work for, because they just kind of bounce around, which is very normal in the construction industry. My biggest frustration is the lack of knowledge in 2025. I can't tell you how frustrating it is, especially on a very competitive bid where, we have very small profit margins, and to get to a site only to be dicked around by some kid that's out of college, doesn't know what he's doing. He's putting all kinds of red tape in front of you. You have to go over his head and talk to the owner. It just becomes this big like conflict for no reason, just because someone just doesn't have the know-how, right? That would probably be one of my biggest frustrations. And Johnny, I'm actually curious to hear what yours are, because I know you deal with the estimators. We both kind of deal with the project managers, but yeah, but again, I tip my cap to them because you heard it from me, you heard it from Johnny. I truly don't envy them. It's a tough gig, man. You essentially, like, you're leading the charge. It's like you're going into the war and you're the general, man, and you have all your trades and all your knights on horses behind you, which are all the trades, right? So I commend them. It's a very tough job, and but with that being said, we've been fortunate to have met some really great ones over the years, and very fortunate to still be working with them today. And any advice I can give to people is, go out, meet as many as you can, and try doing small projects with them to begin with, and just build from there. And then you'll quickly see which ones are good and which ones are bad. And obviously you don't want to find out somebody's bad on a $500,000 project. So, start small, and you'll really get an insight into what kind of company they are and how they run their operations, which I think will give you confidence to then move forward with bigger projects with them.
Yeah, and just to also, again, just, commending all these GCs, because it is a tough job. If there's any recommendation, and again, I'm a sub trade, so, take it as with a grain of salt, or, use this information. But I think there's a couple of things that general contractors should do. So number one, build a relationship with each and every trade that you have, right? Make them trust you and make you trust them, right? So that's number one. Number two is organization, right? Because as a GC, if something happens on a site and something needs to be priced, something needs to be moved, is there a price increase? Is there a credit? The trades that you're working with, if they're organized and they're responsive, it's going to make your life that much easier. So, getting back to, it's not always a race to the bottom dollar, because what does that mean? When you're racing to get the cheapest price, typically there's a reason why it's the cheapest price. We talk about this all the time. Are they going to show up? When there's a change that happens that has to happen fast, are they pricing it in a timely manner? Are they coming back to site in a timely manner? Are they helping out? Right? Because a lot of times we'll be asked for something and say, yeah, the engineer or, the client has requested this. And all of a sudden you're getting pricing on it from the suppliers or whatever. And it's like, well, why are they using a $10,000 sink? I can get one that looks, very similar and it's $1,000. I'll save you $9,000 just off the bat, right? Or why are we going to move these pipes here? If we move these pipes here, we got to move this beam, we got to do this, we got to do that. But if we move them over here, it's going to cut the work in half, and even what, the bill is in the end, right? So, to any general contractor out there, these are the things that I do recommend working with the trades, is getting to really know them, getting to understand how they work, and getting them to help you, right? You guys truly are silent business partners, right? A GC is nothing without his trades, and trades typically are nothing without the GC. The GC gets the projects, right? The trades then give the GC pricing for that project, right? So it's definitely, it's a two-way road. And just finally, again, I'll say it one more time. The biggest difference is that, if the GC does select a subtrade that, just because he was the cheapest and God forbid something happens, sure, like the GC can go after the subtrade after, but it's the GC's name that's getting tarnished. It's not the electrical company or the plumbing company that's being looked at like from the client's level, right? They're looking at the GC, like, what the hell happened here? Get this done. Why did this happen? And a lot of times the GC sitting there like, oh shit, I got to ask this guy what happened here and how we're going to mitigate this, right? So again, I tip my cap to the GCs because they got a tough fucking job. Like Charlie said, right? They're the generals. They're the people on the front line, right? We relay the information to the GC. The GC then relays the information to the client, engineers, consultants, architects, whoever that may be. And sometimes, they have a tough gig, right? Whereas as a subtrade, we're looking at the project from, our scope of work. Obviously, good trades kind of like look around to make sure everybody's good and nobody's interfering with nobody. And if, something has to be moved, let's talk about it now before we install it. So it's definitely a collaborative effort. So I think to sum this all up, a good GC knows how to really schedule and get like bring the team together, right? So everybody's collaborating together, right? That's kind of, it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So you kind of you glossed over something that I wanted to touch on as well. So I speak to a lot of GCs, most of our clients, most that are our clients use Jobtable. So I get a lot of perspectives from GCs, like in the weeds of the day to day and how like they manage their, their operations or tasks and all this stuff. And like you guys both said, right? And I see it too. GCs have a tough job. They're that middleman. They're between the client. They're dealing with the trades, like all they're dealing with all the shit, right? So But the struggle I hear from a lot of them is, like you guys both said, they rely on their team, their sub trades, to make sure like they're on the ball, they're quality, they're organized. But I can't tell you how many times I speak to GCs who use, let's say, a reliable sub trade, but like totally disorganized, right? They're spending like taking like weeks to send an invoice, or like they're chasing them to send an invoice, right? To deal with the paperwork. So a lot of GCs that we work with now, they're thinking like, man, how can I get all of the sub trades that I work with, like this is my team, to use a system? So imagine how you're a GC who, and all your sub trades are sending you like a uniform invoice, very quick, very clean. That's going to make the GCs already dealing with so much stress. Like that simple part of their day and their process is just going to improve their overall workflow. It's just going to alleviate a lot of the unnecessary stress. So, if you're a GC and, you're listening to this, like if I'm a GC, I would definitely consider that. Like I want to get my sub trades, the guys that I'm relying on and working with all the time, to try and get their shit together, like make them as organized as possible, because that's going to make me organized. That's going to make the client happier. Like it's just going to make the whole flow better.
Yeah, like almost like a prerequisite. It's like, look, you're a good sub trade, love the work you do. I call you, very responsive. You do a great job, very friendly on site, get along with everybody. But fuck, you're not sending me your invoice on time. Or you know what? Fuck, I'm trying to close this project. I've asked you 3-4 times. You keep telling me you're going to send it to me, tomorrow or by the end of the week. Tomorrow came, the end of the week came. I still don't have it. I can't close. I can't send my client, the quote until I have your quote, because it's incumbents of everybody's quote together. That's what I am as a GC, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
so you kind of got to make it like a prerequisite to work with me. When you work with me, you need to have a system in place that I know that you're sending me invoices on time, right? Like in the field that we work, we're only allowed to invoice once a month, on a certain day, once a month. So what happens is we don't get that invoice in on or before that date. 30 days of work that we did, sure, you can send the invoice. It's not getting approved until the next month. Then the clock starts working from there, right?
Let's put it this way. Nobody should ever call you to remind you to invoice. And if you're getting phone calls to remind you to send an invoice, you're doing things the wrong way, period. Right? You don't have a proper system in place. Obviously for us, we use Jobtable. We're the founders. So that's obviously what we use, but we always tell people it doesn't have to be Jobtable. It can be any software. What I love about Jobtable is I actually don't even say it's a software. I say it's a problem solver. Whatever your problem may be, there's a solution for you in Jobtable. So if it's, you need timesheets for guys, we have timesheets. In this particular case, I would actually say it's above invoicing. It's project management, which is a monster of a section that we use every single day, from our estimator to our project managers to our site supers on site to our employees that are under the foremans. Everybody has access, limited obviously to some, but we're able to collaborate information, and then we're able to invoice within minutes of jobs being completed, which I cannot stress the importance of, because like I said, the faster you get your invoices out, the faster you're going to get paid.
Yeah, it's 2025, right? If I was a GC, I wouldn't put up with the shit from subtrades. Truthfully, I wouldn't. It's 2025. How many people, even now, right, Costa, Charlie, we talk to so many guys, and I understand they're one guy in a truck, a few employees, up to 10 employees. Oh man, I'm doing it all. Yeah, but you haven't taken the time, right? Like you need to get organized. If you finish the job and the GC's waiting on you to invoice so he can, think about it as a plumbing company, right? Let's use a house as an example. As a plumbing company, okay, we did the plumbing. That's the only thing that's on our mind, right? But the guy has to invoice the GC has to invoice the plumbing. He has to invoice the HVAC, the framing, maybe back framing, the electrician, maybe the foundation guy sent his invoice like late. So this guy's trying to send a bill with his markup to the client because he needs to make money too to run his company. and he's waiting on everybody, so it's holding up his money. I wouldn't, if I was a GC, I wouldn't fucking deal with it. I would literally tell these guys, it's 2025. You should have something by now that if I ask you for an invoice, okay, for work you've already done, I'm literally trying to get you paid. And you're telling me you haven't had time to send, like, does that make sense? Like, can you imagine going to a restaurant and you know, trying to leave the restaurant's like, hey, sorry, I'm waiting tables. I can't send you the invoice. Like, you got to sit around, you know, for hours and hours, days and days, weeks and weeks, sitting at the table, waiting to pay your bill so you can leave. Like, it's fucking ridiculous.
That's such a great point, because that's actually something that we've gone through where we had completed a job for months on end and we were waiting for our 10% holdback to be released, only to find out that one of the other sub-trades still hadn't sent their final invoice, they hadn't finished their closeouts. All of these like things that had nothing to do with us, but were completely out of our control. And that's where I'll say that sometimes general contractors, you know, as much as we scrutinize them, sometimes they're amazing. They're doing everything the right way. It's just they might have a few bad sub-trades, or not only, I don't even want to say bad sub-trades, but just sub-trades that don't have a good process. And they just need a helping hand in just organizing themselves and streamlining their businesses in order to kind of catch up with everybody else. Right?
That's such a hilarious analogy, John. Like, yeah, imagine you're sitting at a restaurant, you finish eating, and you're like hounding the restaurant owner, the waitress, to give you the bill.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I just
but it's so crazy because it hearing this from like someone, again, not in the industry, like I you know, own Jobtable, so I speak to these guys all the time. This is so mind-boggling to me. It sounds like you're telling me there's actually contractors who operate this way, and the reality is like, yes, like I speak to them every day,
all the time,
and it's just like I can't wrap my head around it. It's like, yeah, to your point, I think it should be almost like a prerequisite. Like, if you want to work with me as a sub-trade, it's like, use a friggin' software.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. The last guy I spoke to, you know, and this happens. I tell you, like every week, we get into a conversation. I start talking about Jobtable. The guy thinks I'm trying to sell him, you know, and it's like, dude, like if you can't see that you don't need something where you can invoice on the spot, okay? You can be on a ladder, you can be in your truck, you can be on the toilet, you know, like you can be in bed, you know. I don't know what else to say anymore, right? You know, to those same people, I always say, okay, you go to the store, you go to Tim Hortons, you go to buy a coffee, right? And they're making you wait an hour. No, the coffee's there. You know, I poured your coffee. It's in the cup. I'm going to place it on the counter, but hold on. You got to wait for me to, you know, give you a bill. You would lose your fucking mind. So with all due respect, what do you think the GC or the client is going through when they just want to know, like, man, can I have the invoice because I need to make sure my finances are in order, right? I need to bill because you, as one of the sub-trades out of 30 I have on this project, you might be holding 29 companies' money up because I need to send one bill that has, you know, all the charges on one, right? I can't understand it. And I know eventually we're going to get there, just like everybody who didn't want a smartphone, eventually they get there. But you know, that's why I say, like, the GCs have a very tough job because you're dealing with a lot of different personalities. They could be great at their trade, but they might hold you up every month on billing, every week, like depending on, you know, how that GC is invoicing. And unfortunately, you know, it comes down to, are these trades organized? Do they have their processes and procedures in place that, sure, you can do the job. You're great at doing the job. You clean up. You're wonderful in that aspect. But fuck, man, you're holding up the project's money just because I'm waiting on the invoice from you. It's like the world revolves around you. And this is where we come back to, you know, you got to be mindful of everybody's time. Everybody's time is just as valuable as yours, right? So be respectful. And what does that mean? Get some type of software. We say it all the time on here. I know a lot of people think we just push Jobtable. Listen, even if you want to use another one, get something where invoicing, quoting is a process that you guys have that makes, you know, your clients happy, your GCs, like you're not holding nobody up. Like we just talked to somebody, what was it, last month? The guy came to us after we spoke to him 6 months prior about Jobtable. He came to us right before Christmas begging us to onboard him because he had $120,000 worth of invoicing to do that dates back to August. Like, it's mind blowing to me, right? It truly is. It's 2025, guys. Get your fucking procedures in place. Make it like clockwork where you can invoice, doesn't matter, $10 to, hundreds of thousands of dollars within minutes. Everybody should have that tool in their bag. I guarantee you everybody has the newest drill, the newest tools in their bag that they love to use. This is another tool. In order to manage and run a construction company in 2025, a tool like Jobtable is a necessity. And I think any GC listening would probably piggyback off of what we're saying and say, like, damn right, these guys are speaking the truth.
All right, well, shout out to all the GCs out there. Any last words with this topic?
Charlie?
I think we're good. We
I think
covered
we
it.
nailed it home. Yeah. All right. So last topic here, and this might be a controversial one. I'm not sure why, but the idea of DEI. So what is that? Diversity, equity, inclusion. This is essentially like policies that a lot of industries and organizations, companies have kind of implemented over the last, I don't know how many, several years, maybe decade plus, I would say. And kind of relating that into the construction world. So Charlie, with you, because I know you do a lot of the hiring. When you're hiring someone for iPlum, what are you looking for?
Best person for the job. Period.
Very simple.
Yeah, very simple. I remember picking up a newspaper years back and seeing something. It was an article talking about the firefighters, and that they had to hire a certain amount of minorities in order to meet some kind of quota. And I thought it was a joke, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, there's no way we've gotten to a place where I have to kind of meet a quota, and I'm not even looking at the best person for the job. I just have to just meet these requirements in order to make this quota. And I was actually like really taken aback and disgusted by that, because it really has nothing to do with what race you are, where you're from. Is who is the best person for the job. If there's a building that's on fire and I need to save multiple people, who is going to run in there and do the best job the most fast and efficient way possible, right? So, again, this is going back some years, and I've seen a lot more of that since then. I grew up, in downtown. I don't have a racist bone in my body. I don't, it's not something I look at. I look at the best person for the job, who is the most qualified, who's got the highest work ethic, the best drive. And funny, actually, I got a quick funny story, Johnny. You might remember this. When we were in trade school, I won't name the school, but there was a women's studies class that decided to come into our plumbing lab, and a girl wanted to do a presentation on hiring women in the workforce. And she did her whole speech, and I remember having a discussion with her, and I asked her, I said, in plumbing, we're required to be able to lift like a 6-inch cast iron pipe on our shoulders, right? It's just, I'm 170 pounds soaking wet, and I was able to do it. It's just everybody has to be able to do it. And I asked her, I said, would you be able to lift up that pipe? And she said, no, absolutely not. So I asked her, so what would you expect your employer to do in that situation, right? Like you have a big skid of pipe that got to the site. You need to move all of these pipes from this side of the building to the other side of the building. What are you going to say? I would tell him that I can't, and he needs to provide me with a second person to help me lift those pipes, right? So at that point, it's not an issue, in my eyes, it's not an issue about race, it's not an issue about gender. It's an issue that you're not the right person for the job. Forget whether I wouldn't hire a guy, a male that can't lift up a pipe of that size and carry it across the floor, right? So we've gotten to this ridiculous place where we have these nonsensical rules and quotas that we're trying to match, and I couldn't disagree with them more. We run a business. We're here to make money. We're not here to appease people's feelings, make people feel good. We're not here to meet any kind of quotas. Like I said, I don't look at skin color. I couldn't fucking care less where you're from. I want good, honest people. I want kind. I want hard workers. Like I said, great work ethic. That's what I want. When you walk through my door, I want you to have respect, and I will show you respect. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about a potential career that I could give you. Short of that, nothing else makes sense to me when I read these articles.
Yeah. John, what about you? When you're hiring for iPlum, are you looking to hire, fill your workforce with a diverse bunch, or are you looking for the best people?
It's a funny question. Listen, it's a funny question because I'm sorry, man. Like I'm just listening and I get it. Like, we're trying to be honest, but if the only thing I can say about DEI, and look, I'll talk about our field, which is construction. I won't dabble in any of the other fields, even though I might have a lot of things to say in other fields that I'm not an expert on. The only thing I will tell you is construction, there's no use for DEI. It's non-existent. It should not exist. And the reason I say that is because construction truly is colorblind. It's gender blind. It's blind to everything. The only thing that matters is that you have the grit. You have, for the people that are just coming in, they want to learn, you have that work ethic that you're coming in every day. You're working towards getting better. You can see that apprentice getting better by the day, by the week, by the month. They want to make a career out of it. To Charlie's point, right? If you can't lift this 6-inch pipe and everybody else is lifting this 6-inch pipe, and just because, you want to be inclusive, you're going to start to, make these demands about, the employee should send me, the employer should send me another guy to help me lift a pipe. It doesn't work like that, right? You either have the skill or you don't. Right? You can't hide. That's the thing I love about construction, right? And especially the skilled trades, right? You can't hide. I don't care what color you are. I'm not criticizing you. I'm not being racist, prejudiced, against hiring women some of the best project managers we deal with are women, right? Some of them just have it. They know how to get a project going. They're amazing. But then I've dealt with some that, they don't belong there. Now, whether it's a man or a woman, I don't care. If people think that it's because they're a woman and I'm saying this because they're women, well, come check my office, right? My estimator's a woman, right? She gets it, though. That's the difference. I've had 3 male estimators and I have 1 woman estimator, and my woman estimator's been with me longer than anybody, right? So it comes back to it's colorblind, gender blind. It's all of this. It's fucking nonsense. Okay, DEI has no place in the construction workforce. Construction workforce is about, this is the project, this is what it requires, these are the requirements we need from our workforce, okay, in order to get this project done. Because what people don't see, right, from the employer side is the contracts that we have to sign, where we have to put everything on the line, okay? So don't tell me after I put my house and, with all due respect, my balls on the line, that I now need to start hiring people to fit inside this box because, with all due respect, it's a political movement, right? Like, I'm sorry. No. Okay. Bridges didn't go up. Roads weren't paved. Houses weren't built, right? On political movements. It's about people have a career, they have a job, they're skilled at their job, and they go and do it. And they do it to the best of their abilities, right? That's the only prerequisite that should be in construction. Do you have the skill? Do you have the grit? Do you have the determination? Do you want a career in, whatever that trade may be? Yes. Then you're hired, right? And truthfully, that's why you look at even our team. We have, women, men, every color, every age.
We're pretty diverse and multicultural. Just because we live in such a diverse and multicultural city and very ethnic city, right? So we we hire the best people, and some of those people happened, to be ethnic and whatever. So you guys were laughing before because it's fucking nonsense.
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. And the reason I say I just wanted to speak about this just in construction, because look, we're experts in construction, right? But I've seen this even for pilots, right? They're hiring, certain ethnicities only to be a pilot or a cop or a firefighter. It's ridiculous, man.
It's not just in construction.
Who is the highest, qualified for that job should get the job, regardless of, race, religion, gender, like, doesn't matter. You see what I'm saying? I think it was Morgan Freeman that said this once upon a time. Like, you want to get rid of this? Stop talking about it, right? Let who you are and your skill shine, right? That's what you'll be hired on.
And that's the problem nowadays, that like there's too much coddling going on. We talk about this all the time, and this is kind of like a different kind of coddling, where it's like you can make it further just because of your skin color or your situation, right? So now you're no longer promoting the hard work and just putting your nose down and just fucking going after it, because it might not even matter in the end. Somebody might just leapfrog you for absolutely no reason, and that's completely wrong, right? And it's not just wrong in construction, it's wrong across the board. Right? Like, we're living in a world where there's a man fighting women in MMA, right? Like, it's happening, like breaking their jaws. What the fuck are we talking about here? It's scary. It's scary that we're even talking about this. The fact that this is a topic on our show is actually really sad, that we've come to this point as humans.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, again, we're just speaking from the heart. I know everybody's going to have a different opinion on this. We're trying to be mindful of everybody, but at the same time, I don't think there's any better way to put this other than let your skill, let your grit, let your determination speak for you. That's it, right? Everything else is just fucking nonsense. It's all nonsense.
I'm going to say one more thing too, honestly. And if you're one of these people that's like riding that train where you're just going to like try to advance because of it, you know what? I think it's such a weak mentality. Don't be that person. Like, do the work. Just go out there, bust your ass like everybody else, and earn it like everyone else.
Amen.
Yeah.
Costa, what do you have to say? Because I just see you giggling.
I see you laughing too. I want your opinion now. What's your opinion on DEI in construction?
Yeah, look, where to start? I think you guys, I kicked this off as like, this might be controversial, and it's like, I don't know how the hell this is controversial. It seems to be the most logical kind of topic we had this whole podcast. First of all, I think society in general would be so much more productive and ahead if we just promoted being the best, hiring the best, working your ass off to be the best, to, get that job. And that's it, right? That's number one. Second thing, just to kind of like take a step back here, I always like to put myself in like the other position's shoes and like just try and like understand, right? So with that being said, I'm also the type of person where, I like to give the benefit of the doubt. So, from that kind of angle, it's like, let's assume that whoever like started these policies or like put it out was, maybe their intentions were good. Maybe it's like, look, let's try and get more like groups involved in different industries and whatnot. It's like, cool. Now, with that being said, I think the best barometer of success and something working or not working is the market. You know, free markets, capitalism. There's no better barometer to determine if something is successful or not than let the market speak. And over time, I think the market calibrates these things very naturally. So as you guys were talking, with that being said, the following companies have terminated their DEI initiatives, right? So Target, Meta, Amazon, McDonald's, Walmart, Ford, Lowe's, Harley Davidson, John Deere. Like it's a big list. So the reason I'm sharing this is because clearly the market has spoken. Like this stuff, there's no benefit to it. It doesn't work. It's like the companies are not making money. If anything, they're losing money. They're getting backlash. There's no economic benefit. So it's like, what's the point of doing this? So I think this is, I say this in a very positive way. It's like a lot of these companies that you're seeing now, they're kind of coming back to common sense and reality in a lot of ways, which is nice to see. But yeah, I mean, just specifically with construction, I mean, yeah, it's like, I'm very glad this has not infiltrated the construction industry, because I can only imagine, unfortunately, the impacts of that. Like John, you were saying, I think you hit on it very good. It's like construction, it's a highly practical, results-driven industry where, like, if you don't have the skills, the experience, the certifications, whatever, it's like, you're going to get exposed. Like, you just can't, like, do certain things. And, if, like, you just got to hire the best. And if the best means, like, happens to be all women, amazing. Like, they're the best. Great. If they happen to be a particular religion, perfect. Like, I just want to hire the best. Like, I could care less.
Yeah, and you know what
they're from.
And you know what? I can speak on that even from an office standpoint, right? Like I said, I had 3 estimators prior to the one that we have now. One of them was even a mechanical engineer by background, right? Where there's like, what better hire than that, right? Again, immigrant, very well spoken. I still speak to him to today, like one of the kindest people I've ever met. But just, I don't know, just on an estimating side, after a couple years, you could see it was just too many mistakes. I don't know if it was careless, lack of experience. I have no idea. Right now, gave this one woman that is currently with us a shot, I think almost 4 years ago now. And it's like, God's gift to us, she's amazing. Like to a point, it even surprised me, and that's how you can tell that it's like, listen, you want to talk about women in the workforce? Sure. If you can do it, 100%. I don't care. Male, female. I don't care what color your skin. I don't care what part of the world you're from, what religion you practice. I don't care. You know what I mean? Are you showing up every day? Are you learning? Do you have an eagerness to learn, right? And then is that skill then, everything you're learning, is it transferring into a skill that you see evolving, right? Into being better every day, right? That's the prerequisite. It's very simple. It's practical, right? This is what needs to be done. These are the results we need. This is a timeline. Can you get it done? Right? Nobody in school, when you're going in school, nobody gave males more time on a test than females, or vice versa, right? Or due to the color of your skin or what religion you practice. It's like, no, guys, like, this is what it is. This is the job at hand. This is what needs to be done. You can either do it or you can't do it, right? And not to say, like, we've hired some men that they walk into this office, right? And being plumbers, like, typically plumbers are typically bigger, stronger, let's just say, because of, heavy lifting. It's a hard job. And some big guys that we hire, like, I even remember me and Charlie, when we get out of interviews, it's like, yeah, I think he's going to be good. And truthfully, some of them have been like, oh my God, like, this guy, all he does is complain that, he can't lift this, he can't lift that. It's like, the guy's 2 times my size. I can lift that. And then you got a 145 pound, second year apprentice that's lifting the pipe by himself, right? So it has nothing to do with gender or like anything like that. And that's where I believe DEI and again, I'm going to speak from the profession that I know in and out. In construction has no fucking merit. Get it out of here. Get those abbreviations out of here. It's nonsense, not needed. There's no production out of it. Doesn't help anything.
Yeah, look, I don't know how much else we got to talk about this, but yeah, let's just get back to. I want to live in a society that promotes excellence.
Exactly.
Like, I want people to be the best.
Listen, it doesn't matter. You're going to have failures as well, and a lot of people look at that failure, right? Whether they got into a trade, and they tried it out, they failed miserably, and it kind of discouraged them, right? So like you said, you want to have a society that just promotes excellence and productivity, and you do well, you get rewarded, but also the failure is also just like in business. Sometimes you got to fall to learn your mistake. Now get up and try harder. Don't make that mistake again. Learn from it, right? So that's the society we need to get back to. Right? There is a first, there is a second place, there is a third place, there is a last place, right? If you come in last place, sure, it sucks. What did you do wrong, right? Learn from what you did wrong, come back stronger next time, right?
This is just like so telling of the times that we're in, though, because I feel like everyone's looking for a shortcut, right? Like, not just in this example, like the construction and getting the job and whatever, just in general, like, you cannot be a master of your craft by taking shortcuts. Like, you can't, it's something you can't get around. You have to do the work, right? And in doing the work, you will benefit in the end. You will be the best at your trade, at your craft, whatever it may be, right? And I just think that we've gotten way too far away from that. Everybody just wants the easy road. You want to make your TikTok videos, but in the end, you want to be a successful TikTok star, you're going to have to put in the work. There's a lot of competition out there, and I just think, everyone needs to realize that you have to get back to those basics.
Yeah, well said. Well said, boys. All right, well, let's wrap it there. Another good pod, some good discussions. For anyone listening, you made it this far, subscribe on YouTube, Jobtable, and follow the Deconstruction Podcast on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. We do release an episode every week. And if you are a contractor, you're looking for ways to streamline your business, save time, make your day-to-day a lot easier, check out jobtable.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, no credit card required, and just give it a go. I think you might be surprised. And that's it, boys. Another great chat. We'll talk next week.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Later, guys.